Okay, so it is now 2023. I am wearing a crown today because these books are the queens and kings and royalty, whatever. These are just the best books of the year. Today we're going to talk about my favorite books of 2022. This is extremely exciting. I don't even know how many books I have on this list. I think it's a little above 10. We're just going to jump into it, okay? With our crown. I'm not going to put this in order. I'll just let you know. I'll just let you know what's up. I love all of these books so freaking much, okay? We're going to start with this one. Again, in no particular order. The Aeneid by Virgil, okay? Translated by Robert Fagles in this beautiful Penguin Classics edition. Now, I don't love the entirety of the Aeneid. I actually found myself quite bored reading this, but it's specifically book 4. So book 4 of the Aeneid, the tragic queen of Carthage. So Dido. I jumped out of my bed at like 1 o'clock in the morning when I was reading this. That's a lie. It was like midnight. And I came and I sat at my desk and I was like, oh my gosh, this is so good. I'm never going to bed. I'm going to read this whole book. If this whole book ends up being just as good as this section, oh my gosh. It's always really shocking to me every time still I read something that's very old, you know what I mean? Very old. And it's so immersive, and it speaks to you so much, and it's just like everything about it is just like, oh, just captures your whole brain, heart, body, and soul. It really does, man. So the Aeneid it's about the fall of Troy, and then we follow Aeneas, who goes on to kind of basically found Rome. In this section, Aeneas comes to Carthage, and Dido is, you know, the queen of Carthage. And she, in the beginning, she had a lover, or maybe it was her husband. Again, I don't remember entirely. It didn't go well. She's downtrodden. She's upset. And she's talking to Anna, I think this is her maidservant, and she says, "Dear one, dear than light to me, your sister, would you waste away, grieving your youth away alone, never to know the joy of children, all the gifts of love?" Okay. "Do you really believe that's what the dust desires, the ghosts in their ashen tombs? Have it your way." Beautiful. First of all, it's lyrically gorgeous. Then she meets, obviously, Aeneas. She falls in love. The way that the author at the time, that Virgil, skews Dido and just makes this really powerful woman who created this like well-respected city, just a great ruler, a strong woman, and makes her kind of go insane in the face of... I just think that the perspective that the author took on this, and on her feelings, and on how Aeneas treated her, and how the whole city then looked at her, is just very telling of the time period, and I think very telling of the way that the world, even still now, I say this all the time, it trickles into modern times. These are the basis, I mean, these ideals are the basis of Western thought, essentially. So this is how we have evolved. Like our subconscious is founded on these ideals, essentially. Also, what I found fascinating about this is Aeneas is a jerk. I wrote that many times. He's like telling her he loves her. Oh my gosh, I love you so much. And then he's like, I never said that. I never said that I was going to be doing all this with you. You're kind of crazy. Yeah, what a fucking martyr, I wrote. I will sail for Italy against my will. I'm such a strong man. Look at me go. Life is hard. Whatever. I won't hold you. I won't even refute you. Go. Strike out for Italy on the winds, your realm across the sea. I hope, I pray. If the just gods still have any power, wrecked on the rocks mid-sea, you'll drink your bowl of pain to the dregs, crying out the name of Dido over and over. And worlds away I'll hound you then with pitch-black flames, and when icy death has served my body from its breath, then my ghost will stalk you through the world. You'll pay, you shameless, ruthless, and I will hear of it. Yes, the report will reach me even among the deepest shades of death. I wrote, this woman is fantastic to that. I think it's kind of funny, kind of, but I'm also like, yeah, Aeneas is a jackass. I wrote something on every single one of these pages. Every single one of these pages. You know, in my opinion, I think everyone should read the Iliad, the Odyssey, and the Aeneid, but I think that, you know, if you don't really care, just pick this up and read book 4. I'm not even kidding. This is so much better than anything like dramatic, modern, tempestuous romance you could find. I think that it is so good, and it is so poetically, wisely written. It really says something about masculine and femininity in, I think, modern society, just in society in general, and the male-female dynamic in relationships and power, and having your power taken from you. And are you the one that has the power taken from you when you do feel, I need to fix my crown, when you do feel things so intensely? Therefore, if that is the case, should you then try to suppress feelings? Is it better to be, you know, where is the power come from, and what kind of power do we have? Like the power of Aeneas to say, no, I'm a fucking martyr, like I'm leaving, or the rage, the power of rage. It's a chaotic kind of power with no focus, but I mean, powerful. I mean, she's powerful. I did write a note. I said, is kindness, softness, often construed as femininity, Dido being female, so deplored, so trivial, obsolete in the counterface of war and rage, which is always masculine? Kindness and femininity weak? Should we all strive to be warlords, or is it hindsight, powerful to show us our pain, enough to twist us, untrusting, rampaged fighters? Gods shocked to see men take action against the pain they give them. Do they ever feel admonished or ashamed? Moving on. Okay, what do we have next? Probably my favorite reading experience of the year, because I sat down and I read this in one day in my bed because I was sick. So this is Sorrow and Bliss by Meg Mason, and I freaking, obviously it's on this list, loved this book. Again, I was homesick that day, nothing serious, I just didn't feel that great. Sitting in bed, read this start to finish, and this is about our main character, I never remember names, Martha. She has a mental health issue. I love how in this book it's never explicitly named, so you can kind of insert, I mean, you can interpret that however you want. You can insert whatever you want into that. In the beginning, she's married, and her marriage is kind of fracturing a little bit, and her relationship with her friends and family are fracturing a little bit because she has, I mean, her relationship with herself is essentially fractured as well because of her mental health concerns. The way that she views and experiences life. And let me just tell you, for me, I am about to cry. I'm not gonna cry. I felt so seen by this book, and I think that so many people felt so seen by this book. So thank you, Meg Mason. It was beautiful, and it was so well concisely written, but also beautiful, and it was funny too. Like, there was humor in this. I had all the emotions. I was sobbing, I was laughing. It's a really powerful thing when people can look at themselves, and when authors can show you a character who's looking at themselves, who is not shying away, and who is identifying, maybe not explicitly, but can recognize in themselves their negative qualities, and sit with that, because they're not necessarily going anywhere. I mean, I think that, I mean, we all have the propensity for good and bad, and we all have negative thoughts, and we all have mean thoughts occasionally, you know what I mean? And there's a balance, there's a line between what should be acceptable and not, but I think that recognizing that within ourselves and being able to safely and comfortably and gently and kindly moving forward with it and understand it, and it just helps us understand ourselves more. Yeah, the way that she comes to understand herself and try to be better for herself, really, but for her relationships in her life, and how someone could love you so much, but if you can't, I mean, in this case, it's her husband, and her sister. Yeah, it's a beautiful sister relationship as well. If you can't fight for yourself and find strength alone for yourself, nothing really matters. Like, you can't be fixed by anyone but yourself, essentially. I loved Sorrow and Bliss. Next, what do we have? I have some poetry. Let's talk about that. We're jumping around here. This is literally in no order. Emily Bronte, and we have Mary Oliver. I read Mary Oliver finally for the first time this year. I read Upstream, which are a collection of essays, kind of her ruminating on nature and life. So beautiful. So beautiful. I love the way this woman sees the world. I love the way that she interacts with the world. I would love to, like, I find her very inspiring to me. I find her quiet and deep wisdom very inspiring. I think about Mary Oliver all the time. And then we have Dreamwork, which is a poetry collection. I love Wild Geese. I think I've already read that in a video, but Wild Geese is absolutely beautiful. I just flipped to this. It's underlined, so I'm going to read it out loud to you. This is from Knife on page 15. It says, "When I sit like this quiet, all the dreams of my blood and all outrageous divisions of time seem ready to leave, to slide out of me. Then I imagine I would never move. I was dazzled, but that wasn't the knife. It was the sheer dense wall of blind stone without a pinch of hope or a single unfulfilled desire, sponging up and reflecting so brilliantly as it has for centuries the sun's fire." Love Mary Oliver. And something that I have been repeating to myself in my head at many different times in my daily life since I've read her and been introduced to Mary Oliver is, I wanted to head into the work of my life. I wanted to know that who I was, I was. I repeat that to myself constantly, and I can't remember for the life of me which one of these that was from. It could have been from a poem, it could have been from this, but I think that that's such a beautiful thought. That's such a beautiful idea, right? I wanted to head into the work of my life. I wanted to know that who I was, I was. There's no one way to be. What tone of the world do you experience, and how does it feel best for you to move forward in the world, and where is your power, essentially? Where is your power? I wanted to head into the work of my life. I wanted to know that who I was, I was. Don't listen to anything else. Move forward with your self-knowledge. I think it sits right here. I'm pointing to my solar plexus. I think it sits right here. You feel it in your gut. And anything that doesn't feel good in the gut, don't fucking do it. Don't do it. No matter how much you think you should do it, no matter how much other people in the world tells you should do something, you shouldn't do it. We all have our own power, and be confident in that. And whatever it is, go make a snow angel. Beautiful. You know what I mean? Add a little bit of beauty to the world for a little bit. You know what I'm saying? Anyway, so that's Mary Oliver. And then we have Emily Bronte. I did a little vibrato there. Did you hear that? Okay. "The night is darkening around me." So this is one of the Penguin Little Black classics. I have, oh yeah, you can see it. Oh, and my candle. A stack of my Little Black classics and Penguin Moderns. Love these. Yeah, little mini collection of poetry. I like small collections of poetry because I get really overwhelmed, and I don't like to breeze through poetry collections. I like to consume them slowly, one at a time, and really try to feel them as I'm reading them. But I loved this so much. Again, I think I found one of my favorite poems of all time. She really spoke to me. I repeat one of her poems to myself a lot of the times as well. It's "The night is darkening round me," so it's the titular poem. "The night is darkening round me, the wild winds coldly blow. A tyrant's spell has bound me, and I cannot go. The giant trees are bending, their bare boughs weighed with snow, and the storm is fast descending, and yet I cannot go. Clouds beyond, clouds above me, wastes beyond, wastes below, but nothing drear can move me. I will not, cannot go. I'll come when thou art saddest, laid alone in the darkened room, when the mad day's mirth has vanished, and the smile of joy is banished from evening's chilly gloom. I'll come when the heart's real feeling has entire, unbiased sway, and my influence over thee stealing, grief deepening, joy congealing, shall bear thy soul away. Listen, 'tis just the hour, the awful time for thee. Dost thou not feel upon thy soul a flood of strange sensations roll, forerunners of a sterner power, heralds of me? I would have touched the heavenly key that spoke alike of bliss and thee. I would have woke the entrancing song, but its words had died upon my tongue, and then I knew that hallowed strain could never speak of joy again, and then I felt. I think something for me that I would like to remind myself constantly and try to really allow myself to do going forward, I guess, you know, it's a new year, why not? Or just going forward in life, is to feel everything fully and allow myself to, you know, be okay with the way that I extremely feel things. Because what's the point of being alive if we don't feel everything as much as we possibly can, as much as our bodies allow us to feel? That would be such a waste. That would be such a waste. And that, you know, then offers in great feelings, and it offers in feelings of intense pain sometimes as well. And I think that it's good to learn to appreciate that and learn to appreciate what that's telling us about ourselves, about the world, about life, about anything. And then we have, this is not poetry, but this is nonfiction. I think it's the only nonfiction on this list, okay? Karl Ove Knausgaard's Inadvertent. So it's in the little Why I Write series. I loved the way he talked about writing, and like his writing process essentially is what he writes about in this, and rewriting, and how you have to be inadvertent. I talked about this in my August wrap-up video, but how you have to be inadvertent to access anything honest and I'm gonna say worthwhile. Again, what's the point if you're filtering yourself? I don't think it's always necessarily the case. If you're trying to create, you know, a measured piece of art because you have an idea, that's great. But I think that the explosive individuality of accessing yourself through being inadvertent, it's incredibly unique. No one will be like you. Like no one is me. No one is you. No one is that. Like no one. You are completely unique and individual. Your constellation of yourself is completely unique and individual. And you have to allow yourself to find that by being inadvertent. So I really loved the concept of this. I loved the way that he talked about writers that have inspired him and why. So he talks about Tolstoy. Proust, obviously, is someone that he talks about. Absolutely loved this. So if you're a creator at all, if you like to write, if you're an artist, whatever, I just think this is a beautiful book to read. Beautiful ideas, beautiful notions, just on how to live too as well. And then we have two books in front of me, which I read in June. So I read these in the same week for Pride Month. And that was a fantastic week because these are both now favorite books of the year. And one of them, I mean, maybe both of them could be favorite books of all time. I did not include Giovanni's Room. So this is Giovanni's Room by James Baldwin, which was my first James Baldwin. I did not include this in my favorite books of all time. I don't know why. I feel like it could be on, you know how that goes. There's so many books that could be on there. Giovanni's Room, beautiful. And then we have Call Me By Your Name by Andre Osman, which, love these books. The pain, both of these books brought the beauty and the pain. Both of these books brought me. But Giovanni's Room is a sad book. Like, this will take your heart, squeeze it, or rip it out, step on it, tumble it in dirt, and you'll just want to look at it like that will be like an art installation. Like your dirty, crumpled, withered heart. It will really say something about being alive. This book really says something about the pain of being alive. Both of these books do. And our connections with people and how that cannot be permanent. That cannot be permanent. Nothing is permanent. We are only ourselves. We are completely individual in this world. But Giovanni's Room, in the first page or two, we come to find that Giovanni, I think our main character's name is David, but Giovanni is this man that he met in Paris, and they came to have a relationship. Giovanni's being put to death, so we come to find that. This book is entirely about internalized homophobia and repression. You know, I say that we're all completely alone, but we can't all completely be alone. We need something to orient ourselves in this life, like a compass. We need something for the arrow to hold on to so that it knows which directions to point, essentially. And I think that for David, I think that for Giovanni, David was that, and I think that for Giovanni, he was looking for that. I think that for Giovanni, David was that, yes, and I think that for David, Giovanni could have been that if he allowed himself to let him be that for him. A devastatingly beautiful book. Read this. Call Me By Your Name. So essentially the same thing, how we are very similar. We can't be two people. We are one person. And we want to expand ourselves and become this two-headed, one-bodied being entirely with someone. Like, it's so painful to exist just by yourself. Sometimes it's fantastic, but it's painful. We can never keep someone forever. Never. We can never know what someone else is feeling entirely. We can never know the interpretations of anyone else, It's just such a beautiful love story. So Elio and Oliver, they're in Italy. Elio's a little bit younger than Oliver. He comes and stays at their house to be like an assistant to Elio's dad. They're in academia. It's a lot about art and sensuality and the beauty of the body and time's effect on the body. So stunning. This was such an atmospheric read for me too, because it's very sensual and it's pretty erotic at some moments as well. And I was sitting by the pool and it was like 100 degrees and I was just feeling the beads of sweat dripping down my body, and I'm like reading about these people like totally vibing up on each other's bodies, you know what I'm saying? And I was like, whoa. We have two classics here. We have The Scarlet Letter by Nathaniel Hawthorne, which this is something that's like, I'm not sure if this is like an honorable mention or this is firmly on this list, so, but it's on this list, okay? And then we have John Steinbeck's Of Mice and Men, which also totally surprised me because I'd read previously 2 Steinbeck books and unfortunately did not vibe with them, and this was like my last effort to love Steinbeck, and I am so glad I read this. This was, okay, it's an American classic for a reason. But The Scarlet Letter shocked me. I did not think I was gonna like this book. I read this because it's The Scarlet Letter, and I just wanted to read it. I love arbitrary lists of like best books of all time, books everyone must read before they die. That's like catnip to me, okay? And I know a lot of people really hate this book, actually. Like readers that I see reviewing it online are like, no thank you to The Scarlet Letter. People do not like studying it in school because they hate it. But I was surprised. I really liked it. I really liked the themes in it. I thought it was stunningly written. Stunning. Oh my gosh, this is like gold medal poetry is all I have to say. I feel like there was so much being said in here too about repression of the self. So obviously we're in a puritanical society in this, and we follow Hester, who is a young woman who gets pregnant out of wedlock, and we don't know who the father of this child is the whole time, but we know he's one of the prevalent characters in this book in her life. Then we eventually come to find who the father is and their love story, their love connection. It's about the child whose name is Pearl, I believe. Yeah, Pearl. Good memory. Pearl, and the relationship between Hester and Pearl, and Pearl's way of viewing and interacting with the world. And she's seen as demonic, right? She's seen as quite demonic because it's so contrasting with the ideals of this puritanical society, and she doesn't have this because she wasn't raised inside of it, really. I mean, she was raised adjacent to it because Hester was kind of shunned after she got pregnant and had her baby, so Pearl had the luxury of being raised, again, like I said, adjacent to it, not within it. So her perspective of the world is really interesting, and people see her as demonic. She has such a beautiful affinity with nature and with the nature of the self, and I feel like this book is really highlighting how the actual evils and, I mean, entirely hypocrisy of religion, but where evil actually lies in repressing the self and repressing nature. I think that people should totally read this, and I was actually reading, right after I finished this, I started reading Romeo and Juliet by Shakespeare. Did you know that Shakespeare wrote Romeo and Juliet? I don't think you knew that. You're welcome for sharing. I found there to be a lot of really similar themes, which is really fascinating to me, because I think a lot of people can read Romeo and Juliet. I mean, it's interpreted a lot of different ways, but I feel like there are a lot of similar themes in that about repression of the self. In Romeo and Juliet specifically, it's shown through names, changing a name or not being called by the right name or something like that, how that leads to a type of death. I flipped to a good page because I wrote on this one of the most significant quotes in book, and then I wrote, this was fate, Romeo and Juliet, Fairy Queen, the forest of the self, impulse or nature, reference to the Elizabethan period. Whoa, that was hard to say. So in Romeo and Juliet, there's a big section where like the Fairy Queen is quoted, but I'm comparing it to this book, saying that it's really significant, or talking about the forest of the self. Is it impulse or is it nature? So should we, it's kind of like the difference between the animal and the human versus the socialized human, which I think about all the time. That thought dictates my life constantly. The animal of the human versus the socialized human, and where is the line? Where is the line of goodness in that, or rightness? Is to allow any sort of nature of the self just impulse. Think about that too, because I'm a very emotional creature. Fie, woman, fie, cried the old lady, shaking her finger at Hester. Dost thou think I have been to the forest so many times, and have yet no skill to judge who else has been there? Beautiful. Okay, and then Steinbeck's Of Mice and Men. So we follow a pair of friends, essentially, who are moving through America and going to work on a farm in this new location. And Lenny, totally forget the name of the other dude. Is it George? I think it's George. Yep, Lenny and George. Look at me go. George is basically the caregiver, the caretaker of Lenny, who is, we know, as special needs. They go to work on this farm and they interact with people on this farm, and it has a tragic ending. Spoiler alert, has a tragic ending. I think that this book really shows, and why it is such a classic American novel, is so deeply rooted in American concepts, the foundation of society, of American society, how that also dictates the foundations of interpersonal relationships. And I think that this book displays that really well. So it's the power that certain people have over other people, and how there's always going to be someone above you with more power that has a type of extreme control over your life. And I think that that was really fascinating. And it was super sad, beautifully written. I've always thought Steinbeck is literally one of the most beautiful writers. So we'll talk about this one next. This I read because it was on the Booker long list, and this is Audrey McGee's The Colony. We basically follow this artist who's from London. He goes to this remote colony, this island with like 40 inhabitants in Ireland, to go paint the cliffs. And it's about language, and it's about interpretation, and it's about the evolution of thought, and it's about the inevitability of influence, and how we are, and everything is constantly being influenced and therefore evolving. So on this island, the inhabitants are the last people to speak the Irish language, and we have this linguist who's coming to this island at the same time, who comes every year to come and study the evolution of this language and to try to kind of preserve it. It was so beautiful. I thought it was beautifully written. Again, this is something else that I read in a 24-hour period, and I am amazed at how much I absolutely love this book. I thought it had a unique format as well. 4 more books left. We have this book I've read the most recently, and this is Woman at Point Zero by Nawal El-Saadawi. This book follows the story of a woman who is being put to death for murdering a man. She's in a Cairo prison cell, and it chronicles from her perspective the story of her life as a young girl living in a home that is dictated by her father. She then goes to live with her uncle, who sexually abuses her, and the connection that she has with her uncle, and then she goes to school, and it's her desire for education, and it's how society and the system doesn't allow her to have any opportunity, so she has to kind of create opportunity for herself. Shows all these ways different men come into her life and assert dominance and control, and there's not too much that she can practically do about it just based on the constraints of the society. But it shows the resilience and the deep animal strength of her spirit, and I think of the female spirit. And it is intense, it is powerful. Hey, we have next Train Dreams by Dennis Johnson. I read this, I think, in February, so very early on in the year. It's a novella. I'd never read Dennis Johnson before. I read this sitting in bed, again, in one sitting. Very easy to read in one sitting. We follow our main character who's living in the United States during a period of immense industrialization. So he works as a logger, essentially, and he has a family, and then tragedy happens. He loses his family, and it's him continuing to live in this old way, like as a hermit in the forests. So he's not allowing this industrialization basically into his life, but it's happening all around him. And I loved this book. I thought that it was stunning, a quick, easy read. I would love to maybe read more Dennis Johnson. The last two books are fun, escapist reads that just brought me such comfort and joy this year. And the first one I'm going to talk about really helped me through a horrible time. So this book is very special to me for that reason. This is Wondersmith, The Calling of Morgan Crow by Jessica Townsend. So this is the second book in the Nevermore series. I love these UK paperback covers. And this is a middle grade novel. So this, I don't know if you're familiar with it, but Nevermore, the first book, follows Morgan Crow, who is a cursed child, and she gets whisked away by a man named Jupiter North to a magical world. So she escapes the mundane world, essentially, kind of like Harry Potter. Goes into this magical world, has to do all these tasks to get into this magical society. And in this book, we follow her when she's in this school, in this magical society, and she's learning things, and the world is just very expanded upon. It's so peak creativity and adventure and whimsy. It's just absolutely so colorfully beautiful. I loved this so much, and at the time of my life that I picked this up, my brain did not work. It did not work, and I couldn't read anything at all, and I was so grateful to middle grade at that time. I spent like a month and I read like a middle grade book a day, and it was beautiful. I think back to that time, and it was a really difficult time for me. We all have those periods. If you've had a difficult time this year, I see you, I'm with you, man. I was really grateful to middle grade at that time, and this book kind of kicked that off, and it was really, really special to me. And I think that there's so much respect for deep works of literature, like deep probing works of literature that are saying something about a concept or a topic of life and can acutely capture something of the human condition. But I really am passionate about how important escapism is too, just for our functioning, like for our functioning as human beings. We need to be able to go somewhere else. One cannot exist entirely sane in reality. What's the beginning quote of The Haunting of Hill House? I really do believe that. We need to be able to go somewhere else for a little bit. We need to be able to take a break and know that that magical world in our minds and creativity exists, and we can go somewhere else. We don't have to stay in reality all the time. Nobody wants to do that. I don't want to do that. And this was so comforting to me. So I really love these. Adults, if you need something like that, pick it up. And also for kids, because it's essentially for middle grade readers, but it's beautiful. Last but not least, we have Sarah J. Maas. Oh my gosh, House of Sky and Breath. I can't even tell you what this book is about, because you really do need to read all of her other like 16, 14 books to read this, even though it's the second book in a separate, essentially, series. It's not separate, man. It's not separate. Basically, in Crescent City, which is the first book to this one, we follow Bryce and Hunt and their group of friends and family members, and there's like magical stuff going on. I can't even break down Sarah J. Maas's books. They're complicated, okay? They're complicated. Just start at the beginning. Go to Throne of Glass. Move onwards and upwards, or start with ACOTAR. You could start with the ACOTAR books, which is, yeah, you can start with the ACOTAR books or the Throne of Glass books, but, and then go to Crescent City after you've read both of those series. But shit, I was not expecting the plot twist at the end of this. I was not expecting it at all. I don't know if anyone was. I was sitting there like, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. No freaking way. The level of excitement I have for the next installment in this series is insane. Even for the next installment in the ACOTAR series, man. What is up? We need an update. We needed a Sarah J. Maas update. I know she just had a baby. Good for her. Congratulations. Please create another book baby, because I need that for my life. And again, I will say the power of escapism and being able to totally connect with characters like they're real, and then you get depressed when you finish it. But kind of ties into what I was saying about this period of my life that was difficult. I remember finishing this book and thinking, I need to be okay so I can stick around for the continuation of this series, which I'm not going to go into any deeper. That's a sad statement, but it's true. Okay, it's true. I think that escapism is beautiful. Being connected to these beautiful creations that these people have gifted us with is stunning. I love Sarah J. Maas. Yes, so those are my favorite books of the year. What are your favorite books of the year? Thank you so much for watching. Have you read any of these? Do you love any of these? Again, thanks for watching. Have a beautiful day. Goodbye.